I want to thank you for really just watching this week in review. It's a briefing, it's a commentary, and it's going to be much different today because I'd like to just talk with you personally. I try to always document what I say and give you the stats, the analysis, the assessment from a biblical worldview so that you are an informed influencer. But we are facing right now the most consequential election in America's history. You say, well, they say that all the time. Well, things are getting darker and more serious. So stay with me. I'm going to talk with you and share my heart. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and my parents really didn't have much. My mom scrubbed floors 3 days a week on her knees. She was disabled in many ways. My dad never finished high school. He was a maintenance man. And we didn't have a car. It was embarrassing. We didn't have air conditioning. We never went on a vacation. But my parents were righteous people. They were good Catholics. They were not born again. They would say that. I mean, they're in heaven now. But I grew up in a home where I grew to appreciate what they instilled in me in terms of being a righteous young man, being integrous, hardworking. And they instilled in me values that I believe are inherent in what we've seen in multitudes throughout America's history. But we've been going through an upheaval. There's no way to minimize it. There's no way to just say, well, I don't pay any attention to it. And this election is going to determine our future. I'm not being personal here by picking on anybody, but I do look at the policies. I do look at the performance of individuals. And when I back up over the past almost 8 years, I saw an administration that was constantly under attack, an individual who was leading, that's Mr. Trump, and no matter what he did, it was like he was blasted, demonized, and we see that continues to this very day. But Mr. Biden came in, he didn't campaign, and basically he's a man that if you study him and know what he's about, and what's happened in terms of the Democrat Party, and how it's become really very socialist and secular all the way. And I'm going to say right at the outset, there is a book by Mark Levin, and this is a brilliant man. He's a Jewish man. And the book is called The Democrat Party Hates America. You say, is that just being provocative and sensational? No. If you read this book, it could cause you to have your jaw drop because it lays out the truth, where we're at, what's going on, how we've gotten to this place. And it's not just, well, elections come and go and things are cyclical and everything will work out. God's sovereign. Folks, we have to remember, we have a responsibility. We really do. And one of our former presidents made that statement. He said, duty is our responsibility, but results are God's responsibility. And faith without works is dead. And the progressive leftist socialist movement in this country that has taken over, really, the Democrat Party has goals. They have a strategy. They have an agenda. And it's to change this country. You remember when Barack Obama said in a number of days, we're going to begin the fundamental transformation of America. He meant it. And whether he's been integrally involved in what's going on or not, Bernie Sanders, as a secular socialist, has been really one of the primary leaders. I could give you names of those that are kind of the brain trust with Mr. Biden. But you've got to hear me today because I'm very concerned. I love this nation. And I grew up, basically, my first time voting, I voted for a Democrat, Jimmy Carter. My parents were Democrats, hardworking people. But I've seen such a change. It's not the party of John F. Kennedy, I can tell you that. And I would have supported, my parents did. But the Democrat Party is now the progressive leftist party. And so you say, well, Larry, how do you talk to people about the election? Well, I say to them, are you really better off, just like Ronald Reagan said when he was running, today than you were, let's say, 4 years ago? And if you're honest and you're objective, you have to admit these past 3.5 years has brought cataclysmic chaos and change. Look at the border. It's a disaster. And recently, the man in the White House who is not honoring immigration laws. We have congressional laws in place for real asylum seekers. And what's to be done? It's basically been thrown out the window, and we've had an open border, unprecedented in this country's history. National security has been thrown up in the air, and who knows who's coming into this country. So you can't just say, well, aren't we good Christians? We should welcome everybody. We welcome 1 million every year, but they do it legally. And Jesus said clearly, he said it's the thief that climbs over the wall and doesn't come in through the right door in the right way. So I'm for immigration as long as it's legal. And you say, well, why do the Democrat progressive, why do they want just an open border? Because their inherent belief system says that this country is basically a country where we have to do away with this white patriarchal system. White males control and dominate the system, and it's got to be changed. And the best way to do it is just to flood the country with immigrants. Let them come in. They don't know the system. They don't know our history. They don't know the heritage. And when they're given entitlements like they are, here's free education and free medical and free everything. Well, they're easily persuaded. They're vulnerable. And when they get the gifts, well, they can really be, in a sense, bought their votes. And so that system, progressives, they want the open border. And so when Mr. Biden is making statements about we want to change things and that, you better examine carefully what's being said, because if he is reelected, he will have nothing to lose and he will be back in office. And he is, as he's started his administration, talking a good talk. But we know the truth. Jill Biden was on The View recently, and I cited this, and she said, America is in a better place than it. That is not true. If you just look at policy and all the rest of that, look at you can consider how much an American family of 4 paying about $15,000 more a year. You look at our national debt right now. We're almost $35 trillion. That means you owe $100,000. Every American really owes that amount of money. And we can't violate standards like this and think we can get away with it. You say, well, Larry, are you saying there could be a depression? Well, if we're not careful, there comes a day of reckoning, and you'd better be very careful. People say, are you a prepper? Do you store food and do things like that? Well, I try to be responsible. You say, well, Larry, what about climate change? How do you talk to people about that? Well, I try to be honest. When I was in college, I led an organization on climate and in the environment. My children would laugh and say, oh yeah, Dad, always turn out those lights, keep the AC, up high and that. So I do believe, but things that are being mandated and coerced, and we don't have the technology in place, and to say by such and such year, every vehicle will be this and that, and put restrictions on energy. That's what Mr. Biden did when he signed the orders as soon as he got in office. Does he understand what he was doing? Does he know what he's saying when he talks about climate change and global warming and it's the most important issue of our day? It is an issue, but we've got to be responsible on this. And so right now, we're in a very dangerous place. Look at the White House and its endorsement of the LGBTQ agenda, transgenderism. This is a movement. It's going to go, the issues of, what about men and women's sports and in the locker rooms? It's going to go before the Supreme Court. But you have an individual that is pushing it for a party, just like unfettered abortion. Now, as Christians, we stand for life and protecting human life. Lies are being touted. You'll hear it from Kamala Harris, and you'll hear it from Democrats and even Mr. Biden. The Republicans, what they want to do is they want to, ban abortion in every single state. That's not true. That's a lie. Just like when Mr. Biden said recently, he said, when I came in office, inflation was 9%. No, it wasn't. It was about 1.4%. And now we're in a dangerous place, skyrocketing. Crime, you say, why do we have all this crime in cities when the stats they keep quoting saying crime is going down? Mr. George Soros is a man that pours tens of millions into electing prosecutors and prosecuting attorneys and district attorneys that have a different view of the criminal justice system. We must defund the police. And we have to see criminals as victims, and there needs to be reparations, and we have to lower sentences, and we have to release criminals from jail right now because they've been victims of a racist society. Where's all this coming from? You say, yeah, Larry, what about all this stuff, DEI? And I reverse it a little bit to DIE. What is that? These are policies that are being injected into the military, into institutions, into schools. Propaganda is rampant. And you say, well, what is it? Well, diversity and inclusion and equity. Equity is not equality. That's not what it is. Equity is an approach whereby what? A performance, it basically serves as a basis, not for promotion, but preferential treatment is giving to minorities so that they get promotions, they get admitted to schools, they get salary increases because they're a minority. And so we need so-called equity. Pay the reparation. Folks, where's this coming from? Look at what's happening to our military. Look at the statistics. If I had the time, I could quote. You could look at if you just go back 2020 to where we're at today, or go back to 2000, and you see recruitment, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps. You look at it, and it's dropped. It goes down. People enlisting is from like 80, we go down to 55. We go from 52 or something down to 30. People are not enlisting because you have a military right now that is not a priority, and you have policies being pushed, global warming, DIE, CRT teaching. That's the priority. And so as a result of it, young men, they're not enlisting. And so our military and our equipment, we're falling behind Russia and China. We're in a very dangerous place right now. And the military primarily draws from, let's say, lower income areas, rural areas, and military families who encourage their sons, and yes, even their daughters, to enlist. But they're backing away. They're sharp. They see what's going on, and they're saying, we don't want to be a part of this. So we have a weak military. We have abortion, unfettered, allowing. We have a man in the White House that's Catholic with his wife, and he's promoting it. It's not just he's tolerating or saying, well, I don't agree with. Folks, he's made it something noble. It's a woman's, reproductive rights, a woman's body. And it's almost like this election, that's going to be centerpiece in the Democrat Party because they realize they have an issue to scare people with, they're going to take it away. You won't be able to get an abortion. Folks, Roe v. Wade was brought back to the states. Transgenderism, dangerous. Surgical, manipulation, mutilation of children being pushed. I could go on and on. I cover these things I encourage you, just look at Here's the Deal. You'll go to my website, go to, if you would, my past commentaries and weekend reviews, and be an informed influencer on what's going on. I recommend the book by Mark Levin. It'll cause your hair to stand up because you'll see everything documented. Even with the Democrat Party, you say, well, this is the party of the working man and the poor. Well, you look back at the roots and you'll see the roots of what? Slavery and Jim Crow laws and segregation, same-sex marriage, go right on down the line. What party was promoting it? The Democrat Party. And we have a man in the White House. My mom had dementia, and I know what it is. And I can see a man, and I've said this for the past 3 years, that I believe, this is my personal opinion, is incompetent, he's incapacitated, and I believe he's suffering from dementia. And he is the one with the nuclear codes. He's the one that's controlling things, the most powerful man on the planet. And watch him shuffling. He can barely stand at times, walking around, bumbling. He can't even read that teleprompter. Well, you say, Larry, are you complaining? No, I'm simply saying this. The righteous, when they're in authority, the Bible says, the people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, the people, they groan. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. Romans 13 tells us government's function is to promote the welfare of the people and punish evil. And when that's being violated, we just don't say, well, whatever government we can have, that's, God is sovereign. I end by telling you this. The leftist progressive socialist movement, they want to topple this system and our government. They want it totally revamped and changed. That's why they want to change the names and the statues, and they want to really bring about a secular socialist country. I tell you, we've got to pray. We've got to be informed, and we need to talk in a civil way to influence people so that they vote properly. And if somebody says, well, if I got to hold my nose to vote for somebody, Trump derangement syndrome, and, I hate what he represents. He's got flaws. I'm not saying any man's going to save us. Jesus and the gospel, that's what we focus on. But we want godly leaders. I say to you today, pray for this nation. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and turn from their wicked ways and pray, God says, I'm going to hear from heaven, I'll forgive their sin, and I will bring healing to the land. We can see it if we understand the issues and pray and get involved and get engaged. We're the salt of the earth. We're to hold back decay. Thank you.
Hey friends, if you felt this video was helpful, make sure you like and subscribe so you get notified once new videos become available. Thanks.